Good afternoon. I am Abhishek Raj, Project Manager for Qtrake's Electric Bus Program and R&D Funding Program, and I would like to welcome you to this panel session focusing on battery electric bus transit operations for smaller systems with less than 100 buses. We would like to thank our exclusive sponsor ABB for supporting this session, and we would like to play a message from our sponsors.
You get to an all-electric bus fleet. My name is Mandeep Durrani, and I'm the Sales Manager for e-mobility here at ABB Canada. ABB is proud to be an exclusive sponsor for the Low Carbon Smart Mobility Technology Conference. We are excited to hear about battery electric bus transit operations for small systems from our panelists today. ABB has had a footprint in Canada for over 100 years and is a leading technology provider in the robotics, industrial automation, and electrification businesses. Worldwide, ABB has over 20,000 fast chargers in operations. We supply smart, safe, and scalable charging infrastructure to help small transit authorities power a sustainable and greener fleet. ABB is a one-stop shop for all your electrification needs, whether it be switchgear, chargers, battery energy storage, load management. We do it all to help you get to an all-electric bus fleet. We'll now present a short commercial to you. Let's write the future of e-mobility together.
Electrification is fundamental to our lives. ABB technology has always been at the forefront of innovative electrification, but that's only the beginning. The strategic role of electrification is growing, with urbanization and the world forging ahead to create a lower carbon future. We are developing digitally connected ABB Ability-enabled solutions for our customers with our more than 50,000 employees. The future of mobility is electric too, and we are building the charging infrastructure to allow the world to move from fossil fuels to electricity-driven mobility. Digitalization has paved the way to new and safer electrification solutions that better serve our customers and society.
Let's write the future of safe, smart, and sustainable electrification together.
Let's write the future together. ABB.
Once again, many thanks to our exclusive sponsor, ABB. Before we get started, as part of our commitment to gender parity in transit, we are running a national survey to assess gender disparity. In the Canadian transit industry, research clearly shows that there's a stark difference between the number of women in senior leadership positions compared to men. We know these disparities exist, but we are less clear on why these disparities should continue to persist. At Qtrake, one of the ways in which we have committed to gender and racial equity has translated into a research partnership with University of Windsor. This has allowed us to engage in learning more about the complexities of workplace environments. To increase the number of women in senior leadership positions, we need to understand the experiences of all individuals with different identities who are currently working in transit, so that we can make informed recommendations to the transit organizations about the best practices, policy, and strategy. Today, we invite you to complete a short online survey to learn more about the social and organizational context that you work in. This survey is open to anyone in any role who works in the transit industry in Canada. It is anonymous. We do not ask for your name or organization. We will be sharing back the findings of this survey in the fall of 2021. If you have questions about this survey or research, please contact the research team at the University of Windsor, who are listed in this survey link. The link for this survey has been pasted in the chat for you to complete at your convenience. Thank you. Moving back to the panel for today, public transit across Canada is changing. The buses are now smart, data-enabled mobility systems, which are further evolving to add the zero-emission component as well. Municipal transit agencies from bigger metropolitan areas are currently leading the transit electrification drive, but we cannot afford to ignore the 90% of the municipalities in Canada that do not fall in census metropolitan areas, but are still home to 30% of Canadian population, that is around 10 million people. Small fleets face change unlike many others. Their small size, their ridership, special rates of frequency, and their community obligations mean that small transit fleets face cost pressures with highly limited budgets. This session is specifically highlighted on identifying those needs and requirements of smaller systems in which the panelists will be sharing their experiences in planning, procurement, deploying, and operating battery electric buses. They will shed light on what they would do differently if they get a chance to do it all over again, and what they did right, and which they would want others to mimic as well. So without much ado, let us meet the participants for this session. I would like to invite the first panelist, Chris Hill from Guelph Transit. Chris is the program manager for fleet planning at City of Guelph. Welcome, Chris, for this panel. The next we have is Harjinder Ahluwalia. Harjinder is the project manager at OC Transpo for City of Ottawa. Welcome, Harjinder, for this panel.
Thank you.
Next, we have Christa Phillips, who is the Clean Energy and Transportation Strategist from Department of Energy and Mines, Nova Scotia. So I would like to extend my warm welcome to all the panelists, and we would like to move on to the first presentation for the day. So Chris, we'll be starting with your presentations, and you have 10 minutes to blow us away.
Thank you, Abhishek, and thanks very much to Qtric for this opportunity to tell you what we are doing in Guelph. Qtric has been an important partner of ours for more than 2 years now, and I'd like to offer my congratulations to Qtric for the quality of this conference and the audience it's attracted. So a little bit about Guelph. We're a city of 130,000 people. We're located about 100 kilometers west of Toronto. Guelph Transit has 80 12-meter buses. They're all from Nova Bus. They are the low floor type, and in addition, we operate 13 mobility buses covering about 4 million kilometers per year along approximately 30 routes, primarily focused on the University of Guelph near the center part of the city. The last point on this slide is the real reason why we are getting into electric buses, though, for Guelph Transit. And that's that they produce 35% of all of the greenhouse gas emissions from city operations, including all of our facilities and other types of activities that the city has. So we do have targets for greenhouse gas emission reductions, and this obviously is a very high nail. And the combination of a maturing market readiness to actually supply the products that we need right now, as well as government funding becoming available is what's led us to have a look at electric buses at this time. I should mention that electric transit's not a new idea in Guelph. As this picture shows, we did try it once before, although this time around we're going to do it without the overhead wires and without the rails. Electric transportation started about 1885 when Sleeman Brewery, a major employer in the town, installed the first electrified streetcar line in Guelph to bring employees to work and to get its product to the hotels and taverns downtown. The system ran for over 50 years, all without the benefit of the internet or Zoom, and was eventually replaced with diesel buses around 1937. This is a timeline of what we have done over the past 2 years, beginning in April of 2019. And it does follow very closely the recommended series of steps that Qtric has advised in the box on the right. April 2019 was when we really got started. The general manager of transit and his counterparts in operations, finance, and facilities all met and put together a discovery team to start looking into what was involved with going to electrification of the Guelph transit system and whether or not we'd really even be able to do it. That led us to the second step, which was to figure out if this was even going to really work in Guelph. Actually, the week after the discovery team initially met, I went to the annual spring meeting of the Ontario Public Transit Association and heard many speakers, including Ben and Mike from the Toronto Transit Commission, talking about QTRIC and about the feasibility studies that they were capable of doing in order to put together a rational and scientific verification of the performance of electric buses within the municipality's exact circumstances. So we joined QTRIC in 2019, and in March of 2020, they began work on the report, assembling the data, getting all of the GPS information and the block information that was necessary. And we received their final report in March of 2021, which was our way of saying we now have independent third-party mathematics and science-based verification of the performance of electric buses, and here's how they'll do. In the meantime, we were awarded a sizable grant from the Investing in Canada infrastructure program in the amount of $73 million to be used primarily for the purchase of electric buses, but also to build a new facility. Our existing facility in Guelph is at over capacity already, and as we're planning to expand the fleet from 80 buses to 110 buses over the next several years, we really were beyond bursting at the seams, and it was necessary to put together a plan for a new facility. As we did that, we did get started on work on a request for proposals for electric vehicle supply equipment to be installed in our existing facility. Again, limited there by the existing electrical capacity at that building. There's only so much we can do. In fact, 16 buses is about the most that we can actually charge. So once that building is maxed out, hopefully we'll have our new building ready. We feel that we've now done things in the proper order and we're ready to go for procurement. We're just in the process now of completing our technical specifications and plan to have an RFP issued within the next few weeks. Just a few other things about Guelph and how electric buses are going to work. We are fortunate that our physical dimensions are fairly compact in Guelph. It's about 10 kilometers north-south versus 9 kilometers east-west, so about 90 square kilometers overall. If you're familiar with the city of Toronto, Guelph would fit quite comfortably within the old city of Etobicoke boundaries. So we really don't have great distances that we have to deal with, and therefore we're not going to go with opportunity charging. At this time, we're going to do this strictly as a depot charging exercise. You can see from the map here that the depot is located at the eastern boundary of Guelph. So essentially, buses operate in a fan-shaped pattern from the eastern side of the city, no more than about 10 kilometers out versus 10 kilometers back as such. But of course, with an 18-hour service schedule for many of the routes out there, that has the buses running 300 to 400 kilometers per day. We have also decided that we're not going to look at hydrogen fuel cells at this time. We don't need the range or the length that hydrogen fuel cells do permit, recognizing that the range is somewhat longer than it is compared to battery electric vehicles. So we are leaving that for a look at a later time. So we believe we understand what the benefits are. Of course, primarily we're looking at GHG reductions in the area of 79%. Assuming that we're going to go with diesel-fired heaters, although we are looking at the Denso electric HVAC system for the buses, which features a heat pump as well. We do expect there to be some cost benefits because of lower moving parts, but of course we're still cognizant of the fact that this may not be a one-for-one replacement compared to diesel buses, particularly if we're not going with opportunity charging outside of the depot at this time. The political benefits for Guelph are important. Our council has made promises concerning greenhouse gas emission reductions and getting to net zero that we're now delivering on through this initiative here. And of course, the social benefits, as was mentioned in a session earlier today by Josipa, we see the migration of successful electric vehicle technology to trucks in the freight sector, primarily classes 4, 5, 6, and 7, if this all proves to be successful in transit. There have been risks. I mentioned the risks around our bus barn capabilities that are in there. We do have labor considerations as well in terms of training our staff, although our staff have expressed enthusiasm for the project. Political risks, we think that's been mitigated because Council's given us unanimous support for a pilot project now, and the funding risks have largely been dealt with because of the grant that we got from the ISIP group. It's a complex project, as the last line says here, but we found that zero emission buses are compatible with the existing transit system, and we're looking forward to the next phase, which is our RFP. So we're excited about that prospect right now. It should be out in a few weeks, and we're looking forward to seeing the results from that. Just in closing, I'd like to introduce the ZEB Discovery team at Guelph. Besides myself, there's Brian Hoyan, Rob Legros, Jason Simmons, and Alyssa Weeb. So thank you for the opportunity to present the story at Guelph, and Abhishek, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks a lot, Chris, for that introduction and providing the complete history of how the thought for electric bus was actually gone ahead and it's close to getting implemented in Guelph. We definitely look forward to hear more developments on that front from Guelph. But for now, we would like to move to our next panelist for the day. We have Harjinder Ahluwalia. Harjinder, can we have you on stage? Yeah, there you are. And Harjinder, you have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you, Abhishek. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harjinder Ahluwalia. As Abhishek already said, I would like to thank you, QTRIC, for giving us an opportunity to present OC Transpo, City of Ottawa, presentation around zero emission electric buses project. So starting with the transit OC Transpo roadmap and how we are progressed over the years, we started our initial electrified LRT system in 2019, which boosted to the 12.5 kilometer of rail and 13 stations, out of which 3 stations includes in downtown and tunnel area. We are progressing with the stage 2. We are expanding towards south, east, and west, which is going to bring up to 44 kilometers of rail and 24 new stations. And overall, progressing with the stage 1 and stage 2, we will be able to provide 75% of City of Ottawa residents within the 5 meters of rail services. And that will be a very big achievement on our side. To proceeding with that, we will be able to carry up 24,000 customers per hour per direction during peak period from and throughout the downtown core. So saying that brings us big reduction on the greenhouse gases, as that's the objective mandate from our country as well as from our city as well. So which will bring us reduction in greenhouse gases at 110,000 tons annually. So progressing with that, we have recently announcements have been made we have already started a project with the 4 electric buses, and I'm going to take you to the next slide just to introduce you about our zero emission electric buses project initiations. We started the project in 2020 with the council's directive about the climate change master plan as a part of the climate change master plan. Progressing with that, we completed the procurement in March 2020. Currently, we are in the phase of doing our procurement has been completed. We are in an execution phase where our buses have just started the production line, and expectation to complete getting our buses delivery in late summer, September, October timeframe, which will give us an opportunity to put our buses in service at the end of 2021. So in addition to that, you may have already heard the announcements about the larger fleet implementation. That's work in progress on our side. So I'm just mainly talking about the 4 buses at this time. We are progressing, seeking approvals for our larger fleet at this time. So just to provide you so far how's our experience have been in regards to zero emission electric buses. As I said, we did the procurement in 2020. We have currently bought 4 new Flower electric buses with long range electric buses with a 528 kilowatt battery energy storage. And so bringing that in, we absolutely had a lot of opportunity to learn from other transit agency. We learn time to time. We have contacted them, and industry have been very, very helpful for sure. So we have reached out to different transit agencies, Winnipeg, TTC, Brampton, York, you name it, around Ontario, and Opta has been great help. QTRIC is great to being a member of QTRIC, which is absolutely been great help. So stating that we all have a same target around just achieving the reduction in the greenhouse gases. That's great an opportunity. We started at the right time, and we are still immature at this point, but it's progressing as we grow. Having another major opportunity we had a partnership with the Hydro Ottawa, where they are doing the design, plan, and implementation of charger infrastructure for us. Also, any upgrades regarding to the capacity that's have been taken care of by Hydro Ottawa and our sister concern and Enviri Solutions. We are very closely working with Enviri. As soon as we started the project, we had a good initiation with them, and they have been heavily involved in that regards. So which also gave us an opportunity to more concentrate on our side to be working onto the implementation of buses, and then we have pantograph chargers and various vendor involved in that case. So currently we are using plug-in and pantograph charger in depot, and that's much gave us there are multiple challenges. One of the biggest challenges we are facing is integration within our fleet. So accepting the technology, operation, cultural changes, supply chain, you name it. I have been hearing that very well. All the other members are facing these same challenges. It's been another challenge I can talk about is training, and that's what it's been progressing overall well. We are learning from other transits, but it's been quite a ride, and it's progressing well. That's what I can say. That's stating that those are some of the our experience to provide to you guys, and if you have anything to let any questions, we will take it via question and answer panel.
Thanks a lot for the informative presentation there, Harjinder. The collaborations with Hydro Ottawa and Enviri, that business model definitely looks interesting. QTRIC has also used that in one of its projects, the eBus project. So I would like to thank you there, and we'd come back to you with our questions in the panel discussion. We would like to move on with the next panelist for the day. I would like to welcome Christa Phillips from Department of Energy and Mines, Nova Scotia. Welcome, Christa, and you have 10 minutes to go.
Wonderful. Thank you, Abhishek. So as he mentioned, I'm from the Nova Scotia Department of Energy and Mines. So I work with the province on a number of our public transit systems. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview today of Nova Scotia's context around public transit, and then focus a little bit more on Cape Breton Transit's electrification plans. So from the provincial perspective, Nova Scotia's priorities around transportation are about GHG emission reduction. So as you can see on the pie chart here, transportation represents about 32% of our greenhouse gas emissions, second after our electricity sector. So while we're in the process of cleaning up our electricity sector, we are also, of course, now working on our transportation sector, which includes, of course, our public transit systems. So a really important aspect in Nova Scotia is equity in clean transportation. So we do have a large population in our province that suffers from energy poverty and from low income. So we want to make sure that we can provide clean transportation to all of our citizens. So we do have a large focus on equity. And then second, we have education and engagement. So just getting out there, talking to people, making sure they understand what the issues are around climate change, what the benefits are of clean transportation. So we do a lot of engagement around that piece. Of course, there's training and employment, greening jobs, training, bringing our public transit operators and maintenance and just the whole team up to speed on what they need to know in this new and emerging technology. So electrification for the public transit is what we're looking at for most of our systems in Nova Scotia right now. Of course, there's hydrogen, which will definitely, I'm sure, play a role in the future. So right now the focus is on electrification. So that's what I'm looking at today. So we do have 5 transit agencies in Nova Scotia. Halifax Transit, of course, being the largest system in Atlantic Canada, has a fleet of over 400 buses. So we're not really talking about them too much today. Cape Breton, being our second largest in the province, has an urban and rural system, covers a relatively large geographic area, has a fleet of about 40 buses. The next one would be King's Transit. And King's Transit is really interesting in that it's a rural transportation fleet. It operates along a highway route and it connects various small towns. So it's almost more of an intercity bus fleet as opposed to a typical public transit fleet. But it is operated by the municipalities, a cooperation and a board of directors by various municipalities. And they have a fleet of about 12 buses. Next, of course, is Bridgewater Transit, very small transit. One bus does a ring route around the town, and it's a relatively new system, and it does a great service for the community. So happy to see more of that system grow over the coming years, hopefully. And of course, Yarmouth Transit is our smallest rural transportation system, or small town, I should say. They operate the smaller buses, so they don't use the 40-foot, they use more of a 20-foot buses, very small system. So each of these systems are at various different stages of planning for electrification, some quite far along, some just at the very beginning stages. So I just kind of wanted to highlight King's Transit a little bit, where I said they operate along the highway. So for anyone familiar with Nova Scotia, this is the valley area of Nova Scotia. And so this is Windsor over to the far right, and then Wolfville, and it goes all the way down to Digby, just beyond Digby. So it's a one-way route of 150 kilometers from Wolfville to, I said Greenwood here on the slide, that's actually a mistake, it goes beyond Digby. So yeah, quite a long system. So very different challenges for King's Transit versus your typical inter-town, inter-city transit system. So what I want to talk to you today is about Cape Breton Transit's electrification plans and where they're at. I mentioned they're the second largest transit system in Nova Scotia. Significant opportunity to decarbonize this system with 40 buses. They have some challenges, so we want to work with them to make sure that they're ready for electrification and taking the right steps to do it in a really methodical and reasonable approach. So I mentioned they have 40 buses. They have about 10 routes in the area. They start in the downtown Sydney core, which is the star towards the lowermost star on this map is where they're based. And then they go out to the outskirts of North Sydney, City Mines, Glace Bay, and New Waterford. And that circle in the middle of the map is Cape Breton University. And that is a significant focus of the transit system. It attracts, there's a lot of students coming and going from all of these areas to Cape Breton University. So the Cape Breton has had some challenges over the years. They had really, really low ridership for years. And then Cape Breton University did a very large drive to get students here. So now we have a lot of international students coming in. And over the course of about 2 years prior to 2020, they had a 300% growth in transit ridership, which was huge. So they went from about like 15 to 20 buses up to 40. They've doubled the size of their transit fleet. So challenges and opportunities. Now we're looking at during COVID, of course, that ridership has gone down. The students are staying home, so they're dealing with that right now. But post-COVID, what's that going to look like with people working from home? But also, we're seeing a lot of people moving to Nova Scotia from various different parts of the country. Either they're from other parts and coming here, or they're Nova Scotians that had moved away and coming back home. Now they can, work remotely or just have more opportunities. So we're seeing a lot of that. Cape Breton Transit, very small transit agency with very limited staff resources to implement projects. So they do need a lot of support from the province and from external entities I have here. So that would be like your consultants and your transit experts. From the provincial perspective, which is why we've gotten involved just to help support them and help move some studies along that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And of course, the current bus depot, they have one depot that doesn't fit their bus. Everything else is stored outside, so they have a bare minimum for maintenance on their buses, but they really do need a brand new terminal, complete redesign and modernizing that terminal. So we did a study, QTRIC has done a study for us, we engaged them, and looked at the routes, looked at all of the different factors, and when we look at the map, there's a 20-kilometer distance from the center of town out to Glace Bay, but they do a loop. They do a series of loops to make for really long routes. And what the study showed was that electrification of the routes as they are right now is not really feasible to be done with pure depot electrification. So we're looking at including some opportunity charging along those routes and the shorter routes. The electricity costs, they look at that with our current electricity rates. Again, not as favorable. The red is diesel, and then the green are the different electricity rates. But our Nova Scotia Power is looking at some new rates, systems, a time of use rate, which could be implemented, which would be more favorable. And then GHG emissions. So, diesel, going from a diesel to a 40-foot bus or a 60-foot bus is better, but again, our electricity system, we do still run coal. We're working on a coal to clean, getting off coal by 2030, which is great. So we're going to see even more reductions once that happens. So, quick summary, we're going to look at depot charging, en route charging, but for those longer routes, maybe there's an opportunity either to develop some new routes that work better with electric, or maybe hydrogen is in the future for Cape Breton Transit. And electricity rates are going to be important for long-term operations, so we're really going to have to look at that piece. So it's great. The mayor of Cape Breton is committed to making this happen, to preparing. So the next step now is they're developing concept designs for their new terminal maintenance facility, and determining which routes to electrify, where to start, and so that planning phase is going to happen over the next 2 years. So you're going to see some more coming out of Cape Breton in the next couple of years for sure. So that is my presentation. Quick little shot of a Halifax Transit ferry. I think I might have about 30 seconds left, but we did have an exciting announcement today that Halifax Transit is looking at a brand new ferry route, and they're going to look at zero emission ferries. They are, of course, a bigger transit system, so we're not talking about them, but it was an exciting announcement, possibly getting some zero emission or electric ferries in the very near future in Halifax. And thank you, Abhishek.
Thanks a lot, Christa. That was wonderful. So I would like to invite all the panelists now so that we can have a discussion in here. I see we are already getting a lot of queries from our audience. So I believe all the points that you highlighted, all the key insights that you highlighted, they are being taken quite well. So I do have a couple of questions with me to start. So I would like to, so this question is directed to all of you, and I would like to know how important have these feasibility studies been in your planning of the fleet electrification exercise? So I would start with you, Chris.
Yes, I think it was very important to have independent verification done by a reputable source. I think anybody who's been in transit for a while has experienced more than a few pitches for various products that are designed to improve fuel economy or reduce emissions or tailpipe smoke or things of this nature here that have absolutely no proof to back up the performance claims that are there. So it's really, really important to have a verification document from a scientific-based organization out there that can have the credibility rather than just, you know, I can't go to council and say, I think electric buses are fine. They'll be great here. It's really important to have somebody like Qtric to be able to provide that type of report.
Thanks a lot, Chris. I would pass on the same question to Christa as well. Christa, can you identify how this feasibility study has helped you develop the plan and go forward with it?
Absolutely, yeah. So it was absolutely fantastic to have that done because the results weren't what we were expecting. Small transit route, we figured, oh yeah, we can do some depot charging, and you know the electricity rates will have some great GHG reductions. Our electricity rates will save boatloads of money, and this really really made us realize, like, oh, okay, there are some challenges. These routes don't necessarily work. And the electricity savings, okay, we need to really work with Nova Scotia Power and get a good time of use rate or get a good rate plan. We would not have known that going in. So it was really an eye-opener of where we need to focus our energy and what our real challenges are. So instead of just buying a few buses and putting them on the road, testing them out, it's like, okay, no, we need to look at all these different angles. So that was eye-opening, but super helpful, really important to have done. Yeah.
Sorry about that. So yeah, definitely that added a couple of new items on your checklist to check off. So thanks for that answer. So I'll just move on with my next question to Harjinder. So Harjinder, I have a question here. In terms of the recent federal funding that was announced and the CIB financing that has been announced last year, how can the small transit agencies leverage these funding and financing opportunity to carry out with their transit electrification plans?
So it's been a great opportunity, federal contributing to for the agency and helping them out with the funding side of it. Not only that, that's bringing them the opportunity to add bring up their existing fleet and change it to one-on-one or whatever their plans are. So bringing from diesel to electrification of the buses, that makes them easier and moving forward with their overall objective with the federals.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot, Harjinder. And I would like to pose the same question to Chris, but I would like to transform it a bit. Like Chris, from your experience in receiving federal funding, I would like to know if you would like to provide some advice to some other smaller transit agencies who are trying to go ahead and seek that kind of funding. What advice would you give?
Well, funding is probably one of the biggest obstacles for smaller agencies like ours, this project that we are getting into now that will also involve construction of a new bus facility. And we're taking advantage of the fact that we've got a sizable piece of city-owned land to actually consolidate a number of our public works operations all in the same place. They're in old facilities right now that they've outgrown that are no longer suitable. It'll probably be the biggest capital project that Guelph has ever undertaken. And the award of federal and provincial money for this was absolutely essential for us to be able to get council approval.
Thanks a lot, Chris, and that definitely helps. Yeah, I think these are definitely the key points that any of the transit agency should consider. I will take that question to segue into a different aspect, and that is the aspect of social equity. And Christa, you highlighted that in your presentation, so I'd like to bring this question to you. How important do you think would be the social security, the social equity lens in terms of developing these projects and in terms of seeking funding for these projects? And I think, as you highlighted, how the complete city was benefited by the influx of students, and then we moved ahead to get to start seeking or start enlarging the local fleet. So yeah, I would like to know your points on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned, it's, social equity is a large focus in Nova Scotia for the government of Nova Scotia. So we want to make sure everyone has access. I mean, we also want to get people out of their cars and onto the bus. So we want to grow the transit system. But when you have a large group of international students coming here, they often don't either have driver's license, Canadian licenses, don't have their own cars for sure. So they really do rely on public transit. And Cape Breton, just with this influx of students and the location of Cape Breton University, which is not near the downtown core, it's about 10 kilometers outside the city. We need to make sure that these students can move around. But there's also the original population from Sydney, from the whole area, that there are a large number that do still rely on transit to get around, to get to jobs. So we need to make sure that people can get to their work, which is just, helps the whole city from an economic development perspective, and just providing people with ways to get around and just get to the basic needs. So we need to make sure that we support that transit system for everyone in the city.
And I think that definitely adds to the one of the criteria that any government or as well as the CIB would be looking for funding or financing, is that it needs to actually go and impact the triple bottom line for environment, economic, and social benefits. So thanks a lot, Christy. The next question I have is coming from the audience, and it's directed towards Harjinder. So Harjinder, the question is, with the list of challenges for the electrification bus project, which challenge would you consider as the primary challenge in terms of implementing the project?
So I find that fleet transition towards the electrification is considered the biggest challenge for us. Currently, we find that we have to go through not only just the training, we have to identify vehicle moving from diesel to the electric buses. That's the biggest culture. Is we are totally working towards the change management side of it, training our staff, getting the risk management around that. All those challenges we are currently facing and working towards it. It's great to have the industry champions out there, which we are learning from them. That's what, it's been a great help out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Harjinder. And I think I will use your answer as a segue to another question that I have. And this is basically with respect to the skill sets that are available among the transit agencies. So the question is, how are the smaller cities or municipalities planning the installation and commissioning of the electric infrastructure? Have you found any significant skill gaps at the local level, and what are the measures that you are taking to address them? So Chris, I believe you are further ahead in terms of your electrification planning process. So I'll direct this question to you.
Okay, yes. So we did do an RFP, and we are awarding the contract to a multinational organization that has the ability to bring those skill sets to Guelph.
Thank you. And Christa, I would ask if if you would also be considering a similar approach.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, resources are a premium for Cape Breton Transit. As far as staff, of course, funding is required, but staffing, very small staff running that transit system. So relying on consultants, industry experts, people in the transportation system that know how to best implement these projects. Yeah, they're going to be key in getting some electrification out to Cape Breton. Interesting.
I would like to ask like a question here that it has often been seen that the smaller transit agencies, they are learning from the experiences of the larger transit agencies. I wanted to know whether through your respective projects, do you think that you would be able to create or like generate some lessons that the bigger transit agencies can follow here as well? Whether there is some reverse learning happening in this case here?
Absolutely, there are opportunities there. Every transit is different from others. They have their own kind of setup within the transit. So there could be something we may be doing better than others, which we can absolutely bring up to the table for others, and they may have not even thought about it. I cannot say about that right at the moment, but in next 1 year, I will be in a position to absolutely present that. Yeah.
Thanks, Arjinder. And Christa, would you like to add some more points to that?
I think we're quite early on in the process, so it'll be interesting to see how everything falls out, especially when we're looking at different transit routes. I mentioned King's Transit earlier and how that's more of a highway system. Once we get some learnings, you know, as we move along in those types of projects, we'll probably have some learnings to share. But right now, I think we're still learning from everyone else.
Interesting. So the next question that I have is specifically focusing on the supply chain issues. So the question here is coming from Cameron Benedict, and Cameron is asking whether the supply chain issues that the transit agencies might be experiencing, are they a result of electric distributors not having stock products? So the question is coming with respect to like why the supply chain issues are persisting there.
Well, I might start there. It's almost too soon to tell. This has been a fairly recent development that's come out really started because of the shutdown of assembly plants, automotive assembly plants in Canada and the United States in the middle of 2020. And then it appeared that all kinds of shortages were starting to develop. The first ones that got a lot of attention were the semiconductor chips, but now we're seeing it's other materials as well, including steel and rubber and items like this. In terms of electrical components, again, too soon to tell. We are certainly seeing, just for conventional vehicles used by the city's fleet, that there's certainly longer delays from order to delivery than we've ever experienced before. How this will affect the electric buses yet, I think we've yet to see.
And I think you highlight a very important aspect there, Chris, the fact that the supply chains are now globally distributed in terms of getting the best value out of the cost and the pricing chain. I think it's time that we need to consider bringing some of the supply chain more closer to home, and in the process creating more jobs and investment in Canada. So that is definitely an afterthought. We have to consider that like going forward.
And I would agree with that, so long as they don't export everything that they make here in Canada to other countries.
Exactly. We will end up in being at the square one again. The next question that I have is focusing on present unique circumstances of COVID-19. So the question is asking that COVID-19 has decimated ridership and concomitant finances of cities and regions. How have the municipalities and city coped this loss of finances and support? How do they justify continuing with their electrification plans when cities are struggling to pay their bills? So,
well, perhaps I'll start there. Yes, definitely transit has been impacted more than any other operation at the City of Guelph. We've seen ridership down by as much as 90% as such. And like the situation in Cape Breton, it's the university that primarily drives transit ridership for us. And until the university goes back to full in-person class learning, that ridership is unlikely to return. That being said, we did cut back. I mean, we did have layoffs. We stopped putting as many buses into service in order to save money. But we're planning to gear up again because we see the university making plans to reopen in-class learning, and we'll start seeing some of that back. I should mention as well that we did get support from both the provincial and the federal governments to us, and that, of course, is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. And the next question that I have here is directed towards OC Transpo. And the question asks whether OC Transpo is currently considering only depot charging for BEVs.
So yes, that's a consideration on our side. We will not be proceeding at this time for opportunity chargers, and it could be a consideration in future. But as per our feasibility current planning, we will be proceeding with the depot charging. That's correct.
So it's more like a decision based on like a phased approach, and you would like to start with the lowest hanging apples first, like which kind of
you can say that absolutely, yeah. Just to brings us the more better scenario moving forward with the depot charger. We are capable of, with the range availability, we can manage our buses within the depot, and we do not foresee any reasons to proceed with the opportunity charger at this time. That never say, but it comes with the extensive cost. That's another component which causes us to move with the depot chargers in specific.
Thanks a lot, Harjinder. So the next question that I have is directed to you, Christa. So since you highlighted that Cape Breton has a unique, I would say, layout there in terms of having disaggregated communities. So the buses are essentially doing in what we'd call an intercity trip rather than an intracity trip. And you also highlight that another transit agency, which is King's Transit, it's also very geographically distributed. So I wanted to see like if there's an opportunity to actually, I don't want to use the word experimentation, but do some demonstration projects to see how like coach bus would actually ply on those routes, or maybe public transit buses running for longer distances. How would that kind of a demonstration project look like in those unique geographies?
So you mean like just trying different routing? So if a bus works, yeah, there's definitely an opportunity to try some different things, especially with that knowledge now that Cape Breton, the routes, that the way they run the routes now, based on running from downtown Sydney out here, doing a loop out here, is maybe there are definitely better ways to run those routes. The focal point will be downtown waterfront, the community colleges down there, and the Cape Breton University. But I'm sure we'd welcome some suggestions. To be honest, I work for the provincial government, so I'm not a routing expert, but yeah, there's definitely room to consider different options. And King's Transit, that 150-kilometer round trip, maybe is there an opportunity to divide it in the middle and run something one way and this way? Possibly. So I would suggest, yes, that different pilot tests could be done, or different studies, different options can be looked at for sure. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Christa, for that answer. And I have a question here which asks, is there any discussion about the reduction of fares for passengers as a consequence of cost reduction that ZEBs can bring to transit agencies? So although I understand that the cost saving that you might get would be over the entire lifetime of the buses, but like the question here is there any, I would say, immediate possibility of transferring some of those benefits to the passengers?
I can jump in from the non-transit perspective, so I'm not dealing with transit revenues, and say from an equity perspective, I think that's a fantastic idea. We do have some, Halifax Transit has senior days, I'm sure other transit agencies do. Halifax Transit also allows students 12 and under to ride free. No, actually, I think they just opened it up to high school students. So students ride free. New Year's Eve is free. So Cape Breton Transit has some equity programs for low income as well. So I'm a huge proponent for free transit, but that brings a whole new aspect for the transit system operators to handle that. So I'm sure Chris or Harjinder might have some differing views. I'm not sure.
Sure. Harjinder, would you like to take a shot on that?
Considering that, I will say, as Christa already explained, we have those incentive kind of routes, those kind of fares already in our fare structure. I already been added, so I'm not the one who could talk on that perspective. So I let that's absolutely not my quota for sure. I can pass it to our team internally and get the answers to you. Yeah.
Sure. So thanks about that. I wanted to bring forward one more element, that is the element of data. So as Christa, we discussed about the unique geography at some of the jurisdictions in Nova Scotia, and what we could possibly learn if we can go ahead and do some demonstration trial there. However, ultimately everything comes down to data. Like if there's a unique public data trust that QTRIC has been constantly advocating for, if we have a public transit data trust in which that data can be collected and shared across various transit agencies in Canada, I believe there is more opportunity to innovate and develop new or launch new projects. And it could also be a boost to the local private sector that considers that data as a possible gold mine for innovation. So I just wanted to know, like, in terms of your plans for deployment, how prominent is data collection and analysis among those? So Chris, I would like to start with that.
Well, data is certainly king when it comes to going through audits to demonstrate the efficiency of your system that's there. So it's going to be really important for us, regardless of which route we choose as we move forward.
And Harjinder, are there any plans to collect data and analyze that internally?
Absolutely. We already have a robust system around the diesel buses, and we will be transferring that to electric buses. We have a very good engineering team in our system, which is taking care of that part of it. So the performance management all around that, data integrity, that's being taken care of by that department. And absolutely, it's important. It's not only important, it's just to learning from our past experience, getting into the future. That's key, as Chris mentioned.
Thank you. Christa, I'll just move on to you with that question.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's really interesting, and another something else that our QTRIC study brought to light was that Cape Breton Transit does not have robust data collection systems, not a lot of information. So that's something that would be really important to adopt moving forward, is just some good data collection so that you can have external people look at the data and be able to analyze your routes and provide better suggestions. So, you know, that's something I think is really great, even if it's, whether it's open source or not. I think it should be considered for sure.
Thank you. And since we are almost very close to the closing of the session, I would just ask, have 30-second snippets in terms of how has your experience been in terms of working on these new transit electrification projects, and what direction do you see the smaller transit agencies taking with respect to these projects? So Chris Hill, I will start with you, and then I will just do a 30-second snippets for all.
Sure. Well, I'm amazed at how far we've been able to get in the short period of time that we've been able to do it. But we certainly would not have been able to do it without the willingness of other transit agencies to share their experiences with us here. That's been absolutely vital to the whole thing. And also by having an expert resource like Qtrick to help us along.
Thanks, Chris. Moving on to you, Harjinder.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It's great to have other transits experience, learning from them, as well as just overall our experience it's been a busy year for a year and a half for us, and we are progressing into multiple more commitments, which is going to bring busy years for us. But it's a gradual process, one step at a time. That's what we can say, and that's progressive for us as well as others. So we are moving forward along with others, and that's the way working as a whether it's in your own environment or as a country moving along with your team. That's what I can say.
Yeah, that's great. Christa, your comments on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of our transit agencies have been possibly a little bit slower to move, but I think they've just been watching what everyone else is doing. You know, the big bus study in Edmonton and Guelph and Toronto. Just what are the bigger agencies doing? But certainly, the province of Nova Scotia has a very big focus on greenhouse gas emission reduction, and I think that's been a huge driver to push the agencies to move forward and for me to be able to get support and funding for these agencies is been the focus on GHG emissions, and I certainly hope that continues. It's very important, and yeah, that's been allow us to move forward in that respect.
So thanks a lot, Christa, for that. And I think the gist I get from all your 30-second feedback is that it definitely takes a village and more to get the transit electrification done. So on that note, I would like to thank you for your time today and for your insights and feedback to the various questions we had. And I would also like to thank our audience here for putting forward some deep, insightful questions here. I look forward to seeing you at more of the sessions at the conference today and also at the networking sessions. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.